Canada's men's basketball team is heading to the Olympics.
Abrinas, and Canada wins!
They've defeated Spain 88-85 in the Basketball World Cup to earn their spot in Paris next summer. It'll be Canada's first Olympic appearance in more than 20 years. They're also into the World Cup quarterfinals and will face Slovenia on Wednesday. And TSN's Josh Lewenberg joins me now for more. Josh, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, it's been more than 20 years since Canada's been on the Olympic court. What's the significance here?
It's a big deal. And that sound you would have heard if you were listening closely enough on Sunday morning is an entire basketball nation breathing a sigh of relief collectively. Because, yeah, as you mentioned, it's been 2.5 decades nearly since Canada has been represented at the Olympics for men's basketball. And in that time, there's been a lot of disappointment and heartbreak. And this seemed like it was following a familiar script where Canada goes into this tournament with all of this talent and all these expectations. And they steamrolled their way through the early portions of the tournament. But then when things get real, they were on the cusp of collapse. Again, they coughed up a very winnable game against Brazil on Friday. And then even against Spain today, they were losing for most of the game. But that's when something different happened. That's when this group proved that they could get things done when they absolutely needed to get things done, showing that resilience that we haven't seen in the past. So, yeah, this was a big day for long-suffering fans of this program.
And the team still has to face Slovenia in the quarterfinals. Will today's win give them the momentum that they need?
It should. I mean, this was a big character-building win, I think, for this team. And maybe even, as I mentioned, a bit of a relief where they don't have to think about the Olympics anymore and that drought, the 20-plus years that everyone was talking about. Listen, I know that it's not on these guys specifically. There are some holdovers from groups that have failed to qualify in the past. But, like, for example, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the best player on this team, he wasn't a part of the team in 2015 that failed to qualify, or 2021. But even with that said, like, these guys are reading the press clippings. They know what people are saying, and they know what a big deal making the Olympics was. So now that they can check off that box, they can just focus here on the World Cup and what comes next. In terms of what comes next, Slovenia, yeah, they're led by a really good player in Luka Doncic. One of the things that Canada has had going for it in this tournament is, mentioned Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, in almost every game, they know they're going to have the best player on the court. Might not be the case against Luka, who's really, really good. So I think if you're Canada basketball, you don't want it to come down to that head-to-head matchup. They're more talented than Slovenia top to bottom. So some of the other guys, I mean, Dylan Brooks was excellent against Spain. RJ Barrett really good too, but Kelly Olynyk really struggled in an important game. Got Dwight Powell and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So some of these other guys are really going to have to step up, do their jobs, and take pressure off of Shai.
And when it comes to the big look ahead, how much of a challenge does this team have ahead of them for the Paris Games next year?
Well, the big question, Renee, is going to be who's playing for this team. Now, I give Canada basketball a lot of credit because in the past, despite all the talent they've had, the reason why they've come up short is because they haven't had as much experience, chemistry, and continuity as some of these other countries. So, as they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Canada basketball said, we're going to ask for a 3-year commitment from its best players. They got that from a lot of these guys, but they stuck to their guns this summer when some of the guys that couldn't commit last summer called them up and said, well, we want to play now. They basically said, thanks, but no thanks, but we're sticking with the group that got us here. Now, that's all well and good now, but what happens when guys like Andrew Wiggins or Jamal Murray, who was in camp this summer but couldn't play, when those guys want to play next summer? Do they have the loyalty to this group that got them here, sticking with some of these guys, or do they add some of the players that weren't able to participate in the past? It's a good problem to have because this program, they've got a lot of talented players in the NBA, and I'm sure a lot of them have been dreaming about the Olympics for a long time. So there are going to be a lot of players that want to show up and play for Canada in Paris next summer.
All right, TSN's Josh Lewenberg, thanks so much for this.
Thanks for having me.